Welcome back. We're looking at private armies and the role they're playing in today's global conflicts. From our studio in London, I'm joined by author and journalist Jeremy Scahill, author of the book Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Army. And with me here in Washington, D.C. is military affairs analyst David Isenberg, whose book Shadow Force, Private Security Contractors in Iraq is due to be published later this year. Let's get back to our discussion. And actually, an email that, an SMS that I just got in from Saudi Arabia here, David, if I may put this to you, came in from Saudi Arabia asking, are there contractors from countries other than the USA?
If we're talking about private security contractors, certainly you have contractors from Great Britain, you have contractors from Fiji, Nepal, you have contractors from Latin America, notably the Central American countries, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Chile, Colombia, for example.
Even within the big companies such as Blackwater and KBR and so on, the makeup of their own staff, where they recruit from.
Absolutely. When these companies get a contract, essentially they are task organizing. It's a bit like the old 60s American television show Mission Impossible. You have you have somebody who goes through dossiers. In this case, of course, they've gotten applications, they vet them, they pick out the people they think are suitable for their detail. Now, that's not to say that the vetting has always been great. There have been a number of egregious examples where things have gone wrong. But clearly the bulk of the private security contractors operating in Iraq are not American.
Jeremy Scahill, and by the way, actually, before I put a question to you, I should point out we did approach Blackwater and ask them to come on the show, at least or offer us a comment, and they declined. Perhaps we might be able to get something from them in the future, but certainly on this occasion they declined. But Jeremy, if I could ask you about the kind of loyalties that are presented by contractors, if they are a mix of people, if they are coming in with very much a mercenary approach, when it comes down to military forces in countries needing some kind of loyalty to their mission, to what degree does that make the contractors questionable?
Well, first, I actually just want to add something to what David was saying there. I actually think that the recruitment of these Latin American individuals for deployment in Iraq, working for companies like Blackwater, Triple Canopy, DynCorp, for that matter KBR, is one of the most perverse aspects of this system because many of these people come from home countries whose governments are either opposed to the war in Iraq, the occupation of Iraq, or have declined to participate in it in any way. And so it's a real violation of the sovereignty of these nations. You look at Chile, which was against the war. Blackwater went into Chile at the end of 2003, beginning of 2004, and began recruiting and training and hiring Chilean soldiers and then deploying them in Iraq as in complete violation of the will of the democratically elected government of Chile. On the issue of loyalty, I don't think you can paint all of the individuals who work for these companies with one brush. You have guys that were former Navy SEALs who were honorably discharged from the U.S. military who believe that what they're doing is getting paid some decent money to do what they had done for their careers in the Navy, and they believe that what they're doing is serving their country. I also think that you have some bloodthirsty thugs who want to go over and kill Arabs because they're racists. And I think you have everything in between. It ultimately boils down to what do you believe is in the best interests of your nation. Eric Prince, the owner of Blackwater, I wouldn't want to attach my view of what's in the best interest of the United States to his vision for what Blackwater should be doing around the world. It's a relative question, Riz.
Well, David, we had an email in that came in from London, from the UK, and Harfia wrote in saying, such companies in the right hands can work in unconventional ways to promote good causes. In the wrong hands, they can be organized criminal gangs unconstrained by any laws. And I know that you advocate the use of mercenaries to help train less adequate forces, such as in Africa. Tell me about this mercenaries for Darfur idea. How would that work?
Well, okay. Just for the record, I don't think of the average security contractor as a mercenary. I think the only definition of a mercenary which is worth discussing is the legal one. You can look it up. People can look it up for themselves. Under the Geneva Convention, Additional Protocol 1, make their own decision. I think the idea which has been advocated to use company like Blackwater, and certainly past Blackwater officials like Coffer Black have proffered the idea that they could be used, is actually something which sounds good, but is not very workable in real life, despite the number of celebrities like Mia Farrow who are jumping in on the idea. For one thing, the idea that the government of Sudan is going to countenance armed contractors to do anything in a proactive sense in terms of pursuing Janjaweed is simply fantastic. It's beyond credibility. Now, what you can do, which would be worth doing, is to have increased use of private non-armed contractors, groups like Pacific Architects and Engineering, for example, to do humanitarian airlift, and also perhaps provide static security around refugee camps. But the idea that you're going to get some sort of private armed unit in an offensive mode to go out and clash with the people in Darfur who are making the attacks in Darfur, I think is simply not credible.
Jeremy, we had an email that came in from Los Angeles, if I could put this to you. It came from Umesia, who wrote in saying, judging by the unaccountability of Blackwater for its actions in Iraq, the road from privates to pirates is just a short hop. You know, obviously the image of companies such as Blackwater and private contractors like this has taken quite a knock, certainly in the media. And I wonder to what degree there is a positive side. I mean, can you see a positive role that might be actually advocated?
Not for these armed private contracting companies like Blackwater. The fact is that their business depends on bloodshed and violence and a worsening of events on the ground. And the fact is, when you look at this company in particular, it's run by a man who has been a committed Republican ideologue who has literally poured money into the campaign coffers of the most belligerent right-wing politicians in the United States. It's a cocktail that I think should be outrageous to anyone who believes in democratic processes, that you have a company that benefits off of war that is also engaging in the campaign contribution system in the United States. I also don't think that we should encourage a system where you make money off of war by deploying your men on the ground, literally above the law in the case of Iraq, and certainly in Afghanistan as well, where there's only been one prosecution of a contractor. I think that these companies are not playing a positive role. Regarding Darfur, Blackwater's record of killing civilians in Iraq, and then they turn around and they say, well, send us into Darfur and we'll be humanitarian operators. I mean, give me a break. This company's record should be enough for anyone to say, stay as far away from Darfur as you can.
We've got Abu Jamal on the line from London. Let's squeeze in a question from you, please. Abu Jamal.
Yeah, hello, I'm calling from London. I just have a question to ask, is basically, why are you sitting around discussing the topic of Darfur when you're not actually doing anything to actually solve the problem? All you're actually doing is commenting on murderers.
Okay. Well, David, I mean, that's obviously a viewer's perspective on our conversation. I guess we're looking at the role of military contractors in places such as Iraq and Darfur, and I wonder, looking at it, putting it into perspective, it's not a huge part of the military contractors. It's not the biggest part of their work, is it? The military side, because there is the construction side, the supply side.
Well, clearly not. Private security contractors have always been a subset, and a distinct small subset of the larger private military contracting world. The fact that the CBO report you cited earlier, notes that the KBR contract is about 20 to 25% of the total indicates to most people where the money is at. And people try to get contracts like that for the same reason that a famous American figure, Willie Sutton, a bank robber, robbed banks, because that's where the money is. Now, true, some contracts are bigger than ever on the private security side. The WIPS contract that Blackwater shares, the ROC contract that Aegis Defense of Great Britain has. But that's why they do it.
Well, thank you very much, David and Jeremy, for joining us. We're out of time, but thanks for taking part. And thank you for being with us. On the next show, we're speaking with influential right-wing American activist and writer David Horowitz about some of his more controversial projects, such as Islamofascism Awareness Week. Also a reminder that over the next 2 weeks, we'll be taking the show to the Democratic and Republican national conventions in Denver, Colorado and Minneapolis, Minnesota. We'll be taking a closer look at the issues in the upcoming American elections and how they will impact the rest of the world. And the show will come to you live at a new time during these 2 weeks, so do tune in at 0030 GMT to take part for the live show. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.